What's going on, guys? My name is Triforce Addiction. Welcome back to another COD Mobile video. So this video is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually going to be talking about a new console that is coming up around June, which of course I'm sure most of you guys already know where I'm going with this, the Nintendo Switch 2. So I'd made a similar video to this a while back. I was discussing the Switch 2 on how it would theoretically work on COD Mobile. And that was before we actually got any sort of like direct telling us what that console was going to have. You know, we didn't know the technical specs or anything like that. But now that we do, I could finally, I guess, further expand upon that topic. So again, now that we know what the specs are, that it's able to run, pretty well, especially for a handheld console. I think it's time we actually talk about whether or not COD Mobile should actually be on the console or they should just bring in the normal COD games. So the Switch 2 has been kind of surrounded by controversy, mainly because of the pricing, and given the whole tariff situation going on, gaming is starting to become a little bit more expensive when it comes to consoles. I think even recently, Xbox announced that they are going to make their consoles a little bit more expensive than they were before. Even just the normal games themselves are starting to increase in price. You know, they used to be $60, now they're going up to $70, and now recently they're now moving up to $80. So yeah, the Switch 2, even before its release, is kind of like in a weird spot. A lot of people are not happy with how the pricing is, but not only that, I mean, we do also have to talk about the main system's function. Like, what is it capable of? What is the output for resolution when you're on docked or undocked? Well, I'm actually happy to announce that, surprisingly, the Switch 2 is capable of running 120 frames. I did discuss this on my previous video on whether or not COD Mobile should be on Switch 2, because frames is kind of an important thing nowadays. Everyone wants to be able to run their games at a very smooth frame rate so the game doesn't feel unplayable. I'm sure a lot of you guys that don't have a 120 hertz phone probably like the 60 frames as it is. I mean, props to you, but a lot of players that play this game seriously want the best frames so they could play the game as smooth as possible. I was worried that the Switch 2 wasn't going to have this 120 frames feature, but apparently it does. But only on certain circumstances. So for example, you could run the console at 1080p with 120 frames, but you can't run it with 4K and 120 frames. And honestly, I mean, I think most people are actually cool with that. I'm sure most players don't really play their games at 4K with 120 frames unless you have like a massive supercomputer or something like that, or maybe even on like a PS5 Pro or some shit like that. But when it comes to COD Mobile, I mean, I think 1080p is all right. I don't see a lot of people complaining about that. COD Mobile isn't really known for having any sort of issues when it comes to visibility. I mean, we could see our enemies fine because there's always that red marker on their arms or their stomach to tell us like that's basically the enemy. But I mean, even then, this past season, they made the character skins a little bit brighter so we could see them. But yeah, so now that we know that the console is actually pretty strong and capable of 120 frames per second, I'm honestly a lot more geared towards having COD Mobile be on the Switch 2 rather than just the main Call of Duty games. And it's not because of the performance, but mainly because of how the storage works. So if any of you guys have an Xbox Series S or X, or maybe even a PS5, you guys would know that they have pretty high storage as default, right? You know, they usually have like maybe 512 gigabytes for like the base model, then, 1 terabyte or maybe even 2 terabytes, depending on what console you got. So yeah, the Switch 2 doesn't really work the same way because it's base storage and there's no higher version of this particular system. The base storage is 256 gigabytes, which is not really enough to run like a regular COD game or even Warzone for that matter. But it's definitely more than enough to run COD Mobile, given that I think right now the current storage demand is what, like about around 40 gigabytes around that area. So even then, it would take years for COD Mobile to like take up all the storage of the Switch 2. So I don't think it would be a massive issue if COD Mobile was on the Switch 2. If you're comparing it to like Black Ops 6 and then having Warzone there, if you do play Warzone, yeah, you're gonna need a lot of extra storage to even play those games. I mean, how like the storage cards that they have, like those though micro SD Express cards, are not cheap, because I did end up pre-ordering one for, I think it was like 512 gigabytes worth of storage, and that was like $140, I think. And that's, I guess, kind of normal these days. I mean, it is pretty expensive to extend your storage, even if you have like a Series X or a PS5. So I didn't think that was like just something that was exclusive to Nintendo. Oh, I would even admit like it's even worse on iPad because like once you buy a certain model, that's it. Like you cannot really extend your storage that much. But I mean, yet we still have the question of whether or not it's gonna come out for PC, like at least for global or even Garena at the very least. We have no answers on that so far. I mean, if anything, they seem really focused on just adding a lot of more features this year. So again, I don't even know, like even before I get deployed, I don't even know if there's going to be a PC port or even COD Mobile on the Switch too. I mean, that'd be pretty cool to like. That would be something to look forward to, I guess. You know, after a deployment, because I'm going to be gone for like a whole last year. So, yeah, like that would be amazing if they do have it before that. But again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. They did say they want to bring Call of Duty to the Switch too, and now that it's actually capable of running games, you know, that are a lot more demanding, that's cool and all. But I wouldn't really recommend it for them to do so. I think you know, COD Mobile is obviously the best choice. Do I think it's going to happen? It's possible, but it's not probable. But even if they do, I don't know if they're gonna lock the 120 frames. I'm assuming that they won't. And also, like how far can you really extend those 120 frames? Can you put the graphics to like a very high or just high or even medium to run the game? I'm assuming that it'll probably just take a lot more battery if you want a higher graphic like thing on your whole game. So I mean, I don't know how that would even function, but I mean, it would be nice to use a pro controller for like a game that's, I guess, natively supporting a console. I mean, it already does that, I think, on the PC port of COD Mobile. Like not the game loop, but I'm literally talking about the one that's like exclusive for China. But anyways, let me know what you guys think down below. Also, let me know if you guys pre-ordered a Switch 2 or managed to, because I know it's pretty high in demand even right now. I heard the stock might come back, but I'm not too certain of that. But yeah, anyways, let me know what you guys think about this idea. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time.